To have faith in God is not a stagnant state, it's a journey. As believers, we should grow in our knowledge of God and His Word. Walk with Alan Cutting and many other believers as we walk the believer's journey.
Aloha, and thank you again for joining us at the Believer's Journey. I want to thank all of everyone who sponsors us, everyone who helps us, who prays for us, who subscribes to our channel. I want to thank all of you also who share our videos. We are getting larger, and it's really amazing. It's all due to your prayer, and it seems like lives are changing. Our goal here is that we teach how to become more like Jesus and honor Him in our lifestyle. Well, today we want to continue with our family series that we've been doing, and we're going to talk about adoption or adoptive families. And that doesn't mean that we're going to talk about adopting children only, but because it affects everyone in the family, parents, children, grandparents, all around. And it's adoption comes in many different ways. And so we're going to talk about that. And I have a couple here who have adopted a girl, and they're Steve and Rosanne Oliver.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you for having us today.
So I've known them for quite a while. In fact, Steve has been on my program once before. We talked about the feasts.
Yes, we sure did. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, that was amazing. I loved it. So we want to talk about adoption. And Steve and Rosanne, they had a girl, and they adopted another girl. But there's a lot of process that went into that. And I want you to kind of tell them your story before we get into the discussion part of it.
Well, I'll give it a spin, and then Rosanne, you feel free to share your perspective too. But it was always our hope and dreams that when we were married 25 plus years ago to have a family, and we settled pretty early on wanting to have 2 children.
Yes.
And we just really trusted the Lord, and that was really our ask at that point, was just have 2 healthy children. And so we started in the process, and I'm taking you way back to the beginning because that plays into the why we adopted. We ended up adopting 2. So early on after we were married, we started the process of having a child, and about a year into the process of it, we finally started praying about it, because things should be happening after about a year, and things weren't. So as we prayed, we sought some counsel, and I found out that I had some infertility issues, a very low sperm count. That was the bad news, but the good news was there was technology in place that could help us still have our own biological child. So based on that situation, we prayed about it, and interestingly, we both came to the same conclusion that we were struggling a little bit about the solution, about the technology. How did God view creating a child outside of a womb? Because we were faced with in vitro fertilization at that point. So during that process of prayer, as we wrestled with that choice, that option, we also that was when we also began talking about adoption. So right. We had peace that we knew God had a plan for us, but it wasn't going to be it was going to take a little bit. The journey was going to take time. So. Long story short, we prayed through it. The pastor of the church we were at the time helped us through that process. Yes. Remember that. It was Brad Russell of the Springs Church was really, really gracious and comforting. So long story short, we were very blessed and fortunate. We made the decision to go through in vitro fertilization. And Sophie was created, and we always like to share this part of the story. What a joy that was to not only hear the heartbeat, but even before that, we have a picture of Sophie, literally 2 days old, being only 4 cells, in a picture that the doctor gave us, our specialist gave us. And so it was only one time. We were very blessed and fortunate to only have to go through in vitro fertilization one time, and Sophie was created. And so she's been now she's a healthy, almost 21-year-old, and has had quite a journey herself. I'll let you pick up the story from there and talk about, continue to talk about the why, because there's another why that we ended up going the adoption route too, in addition to my infertility, is something that you experienced during the pregnancy.
Well, first of all, your daughter now is in college, correct?
She's in college
Yes.
now.
Okay,
Exactly.
okay. I just
In
wanted to make
college.
that
Yeah,
clear.
she's in college, successfully doing very well. Finished her first year. She's
Okay.
just doing so well. But yes, and then when she was born, I had pre-eclampsia. I ended up in the hospital, and it turned into eclampsia. So it was a very dangerous process that we were under, and I was just praying through because I really wanted to have this child. And I felt like, Lord, I know you're going to help us get through this. We can do this together. And I took a big risk waiting for her because I wanted her lungs to be fully developed. So then we had her, but I was very sick, and I ended up, they gave me a lot of magnesium, and I ended up in a coma for about a week. So, but that does a toll on your body. So they suggested that Stephen and I not have any more children. But we had always been talking about adoption. So our first idea was international adoption. So, but it was a very scary experience. Sophia was a premature baby. When she was born, she was barely 2 pounds. So we were blessed to see that this child's flourished into a college student and now is in missions herself for helping other students.
That's neat.
So from that point, we took some time. We took some extra time because we wanted our children to be close in age. That was one of our dreams too. But obviously,
Right.
the journey wasn't going to allow for that to happen.
Right.
So
Because international adoption took longer.
took longer, but we waited about 3 years after Sophie was born, and the Lord guided us to a Christian agency, America World, the agency that Stephen Curtis Chapman sponsored and adopted several of his children
Yes.
from. And they were very gracious, and we prayed through it. As Rosanne alluded to, we felt led by the Lord to consider and applied for adopting from China. So this was around the 2006 time frame. So Sophie was 3 years old, and so I say that because it ended up being we ended up finally getting a referral. We had to wait over 3 years. So for 3 years we waited for referral, and then the Lord sent us over to China in 2009. Unfortunately, the information that was shared with us about the young girl wasn't completely accurate, and she had some additional illnesses that we weren't prepared for to be able to address.
Right.
And so at the end of the day, she really should not have been made available to adopt. And the government should have taken care of those needs that she had before she was available. So our prayer and hope was that she found a forever family later on down the road. But they understood.
But we were in northern part of China,
We sure
close
were.
to Siberia,
Wow.
when we found out no Americans hardly around. So our translator wasn't always available when we took the child in for a day, but she was having seizure issues that we were unaware of and not able to get help that night. That we were with the child, and we talked to the Civil Affairs Office in Harbin City, which is in northern China, and they suggested that we not adopt this child, leave this child here, because at the time that we were in China, SARS was was like a virus or something.
It was heavy.
So they were concerned
How
that
does it
we
even
would be stalled flying out of China, and we could be stuck there for another month. And so they didn't want that to happen to us. And then, so they offered to cover our fees. And my husband had several thousands of China, what was it, yen?
Yes.
Taped to his body to pay the Chinese Civil Affairs Office. So he had to keep all that yen taped to him till he got to Hong Kong, which was another week later.
Week plus later. So the experience was really interesting. We, in that moment, and it was the timing was also another tidbit. The timing was on my birthday. that we found out the
Oh,
bad
that's
news that
right.
that we were
That's
sitting there.
right.
So
The
they had,
bad news.
So they had the birthday cake. They had a birthday cake. They're ready to celebrate the adoption and then celebrate my birthday. And instead, we had to go this different
So
direction.
you had a bunch of yen you had to launder on your birthday.
That's exactly right. Trying to figure out how to get it anyways. But again,
It was so weird to tape him every day and pray that nobody knows that he's got all this money taped to his stomach.
But by God's grace, he gave us some time though to kind of work through the disappointment, and we actually were reunited with all the other families in Guangzhou, and got a chance to see the success of 19 other families adopting their children. That was really turned out to be a healing thing for us, because we knew in our
Still
hearts,
hurtful, but healing.
But the other thing they asked us to do, which
Very sad.
which is they used us. I say they be the civil agency asked us to write up a report of our observations.
Yes.
That was able to be used to help. Dame Ying was her name, to get
Her help.
that she needed from the government to be cared for this.
So they're very thankful.
So
for
we felt led by the Lord to be there, but then you're sitting there in a moment. Keep in mind the time frame. We're already 3.5 years into it. Our Sophia's already 6 years old. We had 2 suitcases of clothes that we took there ready to go. A whole room all ready. So everything was ready, yet we couldn't finish the process. So
I think we left it there for her.
yeah, we ended up leaving the clothes there for her too. But ultimately, after we left China, we came back to the States, and God gave us some time to heal, because that experience, it's traumatic, and I use that
like
word.
a miscarriage.
It's like it felt like a miscarriage. Yeah, it really did.
Because you have a room set up. You have everything set up for this child, yet there's no child to come back, to bring back. So that was very sad, and we received counseling from Community Bible.
Yeah, for a short
having
period
to get
of time.
through that.
Well, because I knew you during this period of time.
You did.
But I didn't know all that intricate stuff. You didn't really share that.
Because we didn't want it to hurt other families that wanted to adopt from China. We
Okay.
knew a lot of people following our story. I didn't want them to be dissuaded from continuing their quest to finish adoption.
And I think we were still processing it all and trying to understand, because
I didn't want it to be public.
Yeah, you wanted to keep it very private.
I wanted to keep it private for the use of other people wanting to adopt, not being afraid.
Yeah.
But so God has an amazing plans for us, and so by putting our faith in Him, and we knew we were sent there for a reason.
Yeah.
We felt like we were sent there to help this little girl get her life,
Yes.
to change her life. And even though it wasn't with us, God had another plan for her. In the meantime, we as we got back and we healed, we prayed about it, and the Lord didn't take adoption away from our heart.
Right.
He said, I have somebody for you. Just be patient with me. And little did we know.
But Robert Emmett,
Yes.
our former pastor for Community Bible, he had talked about a couple that had wanted to adopt. And it gave me a gleam of hope that one day he said that they had been praying and thinking through about adoption. And they said a young lady came to their doorstep and asked them, "Will you adopt this child?" So I was like, wow, that gave me hope that maybe one day a child will run up our doorstep and want to be adopted.
Right. So you had as our story goes, you had a vision, right, a dream one night of experiencing that same thing. Well, little did we know that it was more than a vision, because about a year later, that's exactly what happened. Our now Sarah Michelle, turns out her mother and her grandparents lived in our neighborhood here in San Antonio. And by that point, God had laid on our hearts to adopt locally, not go back the international route, but to adopt locally. And we had found a Christian agency, had already done all the paperwork and been approved by CPS to be foster to adopt parents. So we had gotten all that taken care of.
The hours done.
Everything done. And then one morning, I was at home working and walking our dogs in the neighborhood.
Yes, and I was upset with you because you had walked the dogs late in the morning.
Yes.
When I like them to be walked earlier because it's cooler. in the morning.
So on my way back to the house, I noticed this lady and a little girl in our cul-de-sac on our street. The moment the little girl saw our dog, she ran across the street, ran up our sidewalk to pet the dog and say hello. Because the grandmother
had a similar dog that we had.
Yes.
It was a Bichon.
Yeah, we had known them. We had known the grandparents as they were neighbors of ours for about 10 years, and we actually watched their daughter, who is Sarah's biological mother, grow up, and we got to know her a little bit. So, long story short, the grandmother turned to me about 5 minutes after Sarah said hello to Cammie and asked me, we've been praying. These are her words. We've been praying to the Lord, because I asked her about Sarah, and we've been praying to God to send us a couple that would adopt her. Do you know of anybody?
Wow.
And that God had told her that it was in the neighborhood.
Wow.
So to just calm, and she wasn't a spiritual person at all, or very much of a praying person,
right,
till she got to know us. So that was another light that was in her life, that we've all created a bond together. We're a family now. But
So Fast and Furious, they asked. I turned to her and said, "Well, my wife and I are looking for a little girl around Sarah's age. We would be interested." And so we got moving on it. And then we went to dinner, and then from dinner we ended up getting approved for respite care. Remember, I told you we'd already been approved by CPS. So we had 10 days with Sarah over the Christmas break that in 2011, and
Yes.
and she was a year old at the time, but a very mobile, very rambunctious, very vibrant, almost 2-year-old little girl. And we had a great experience with her and with our 8-year-old daughter at the time, Sophie. And then, as things turned out, CPS eventually placed Sarah with us to foster her, and then we were approved to adopt her. And both her biological parents gave permission for us to adopt her.
Not in the beginning.
Well, it wasn't in the beginning, but
I went to court with the grandmother as we fostered her.
Yeah.
And of course, they had wanted to keep her, of course. And it was a difficult experience with the biological father and the mother, the biological. They didn't want to give up, but they were making poor choices. And the court day, when they were going to make a decision, the biological grandmother, on paternal, wanted to take the child that day. So his attorney came to me and said, "You need to come talk to them." So I was like, "Lord, you know I've made big sales before. I need you today to help me with this deal, And I just started out with Jesus, and fostering this child, that don't take away the blessing that she has right now with getting to know her church. She's just been a little girl who's gotten to know her church and all the pastors, and they've been an influence in her life. And are you going to be able to provide all of that to her? And they answered no. And, we can provide a nice home for her, an amazing future for her. But if you give us that opportunity. And, we would like to have them included too, but because CPS warned us not to do that, we said okay. We would not create a relationship, because both of them had a poor history of child relationships. Children, they had some issues of abuse in that home. So they were thankful that the biological grandmother was willing to give up rights to Sarah. But we were about to leave Sarah. We're about to lose Sarah.
Right.
So the night before that court, I got on my knees, I put my hands up, and in a deep prayer I said, "Lord, this is your child. You tell us what you want us to do." we've been fostering her all these months, but I'm giving her up to you. And all you have to do is submit yourself to him, and he will direct your path. And that was tough to give her up.
Well, to
you
see
know?
to make the story even more of a miracle, that our court hearing got delayed just enough time to have that conversation in the hallway of the court in downtown San Antonio.
Yes, that's right.
Okay,
It was.
and then
All of the attorneys, her attorney, his attorney, and what was it? Another attorney. Were all talking to me because they wanted us to be the ones to adopt Sarah. And I really need to explain that whole story to Sarah.
Yeah, one day.
One day.
So God did a miracle in the hallway, and she actually, she didn't. Rosanne, you didn't share this, but she actually, you may have, but she talked about how we were going to raise her to know Jesus.
Yes.
It invoked the Lord's name, and I'm telling you, I could feel a change in that moment that took place there, and then later they came back and they just felt very.
That's right.
They felt very comfortable with us, they being the father and the grandmother. So.
And he just, like, we went from having all this tension, then talking about Jesus, to him just being able to open up to us and tell us about his story.
So we became her. So she became part of our. She became an Oliver on Pearl Harbor Day in 2012.
Yes.
So our journey of adoption was almost a 7-year journey from when we started filling out the paperwork with America World back in early 2006 to becoming parents to Sarah Michelle in December 2012. And I will say over the last 11 plus years, it's just been an incredible ride, and we'd be glad to share if you have some questions about our what took place, what's taken place over the last 11 years. We'd be glad to share that with you.
Well, speaking of Pearl Harbor Day, I have to tell you, I love your Aloha shirt.
Thank you. Well,
It's very appropriate.
Well, Hawaii is very special to Rosanne and I. That's where we honeymooned.
Yes.
After we got married, it was Rosanne's dream, and we spent, and we actually went to. You'll love this story, Alan. I think you will. In Pearl Harbor, we went to the Arizona, and. Of course, in the Arizona, for those that have been there, there's a memorial recognizing all the all the soldiers and Navy sailormen that lost their lives. So, being an anal retentive accountant like I am, I was looking for Gills and Olivers to see Rosanne's maiden name and my last name, and it turned out there was only one Gill and one Oliver, and both of them started with the letter R. So R. Gill, Rosanne R., and then R. Oliver, what she became, and then we were there on our honeymoon. So I took that as a corny sign that we were meant to be together. Mm-hmm. So Hawaii is very special to us.
Yeah,
it's kind of interesting because just off the topic, so we're having a birthday luau in a week and a half. So we're having this all. Susan was asking me about all the trimmings because we're having all the luau, the food, Kahlua pork and all that.
Wow.
And then she says, what sides do you want? Macaroni this or that? And I'm like, well, I don't know, just order something,
Right.
So I was doing that today because we got to order the food, I guess, by tomorrow. But yeah, we have a big luau here in a week and a half. And so
great.
It's special to Susan and I because, Susan was born and raised there and I lived there several years. And we both have families, generations that lived there. But the couple, there's a guy that I'm doing the party with, and he and his wife went there on their honeymoon.
Well, there you go.
So It's kind of an interesting little side story.
Yeah, I will say Hawaii is a little piece of heaven on earth.
Yes.
Not just physically.
It was awesome.
But there's just a special spirit there of the people, the culture.
Yeah.
That just is so. And I've been fortunate to travel much in my younger days, so the culture was really what drew me, and I had actually gone to Hawaii for a week, and that's way off topic, but I felt like Hawaii adopted me in a sense. The spirit that was there in Hawaii really drew me to there. So
to me it's home to me.
Yes.
Right.
And it was interesting. There's another double side issue is that my great grandparents and my grandmother knew Susan's grandparents and father
Wow.
back in the 20s or 30s, back there in those days. And we didn't know that until 10, 15 years ago.
Amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yes.
So it was
So-
weird
so-
how they knew all each other.
Well, it's amazing how the Lord, Rosanne and I were talking about, and thinking about our time here with you today, Alan. We were, and with your audience, we were talking about the journey and how it's so wonderful to have a God that we worship, and he's a personal, relational God, and he's not a God of just the big things, but if we, and I say this, if we open our hearts to him.
Right.
I always go back to the one of my most favorite verses. I stand at the door and knock. If you hear my voice and open up your door, I will come in and sup with thee. Oftentimes is viewed in the context of salvation,
Yeah.
but I think it's really, for me, it's a daily. He stands at my heart's door and knocks. As Pastor Ray Jones used to say, our former worship pastor at CVC, you got to get a fresh anointing of God every day. I always remember hearing him say that. Really stuck with me when I asked why, and I tie that to that verse. And so my point, he's a God of details, and we're just not his masterpieces, but he wants to be engaged and involved in every part of our
detail.
lives.
Well, the whole idea of worship is a daily surrender of. It's like a giving God you as a gift. Here I am, totally
Yes.
100% surrender to you.
Yes.
And 100 completely daily. It's just a daily walk, a daily journey.
Yes.
I have to say this about you guys. So you don't know this, Rosanne, but I follow your Facebook page. So I know that you guys and your family seem to be really tight knit. So we were talking earlier about, I know that there's families out there that have adoptions that don't always go well. And when I look at, because you and I haven't talked in a long time, but I look at your page and I look at your faces, I can see there's something about some joy that's there.
Definitely.
And what I came from a family where my parents divorced and my dad married a lady with 2 kids, 2 boys. Both their names were 2 names of my brothers and sisters. So we had a David and Stephen. There was a David and Stephen. So we all kind of came together.
Wow.
However, when it came to adopting, the father was fine with giving up his right, but the younger son, whose name was David, wanted to be adopted by my dad. And so my dad adopted him. Where my dad did not adopt the older one because he didn't want to. My dad was not the best dad years and years ago. He was just hard on people. And my stepbrother, Steve, he was not tough like we were tough, and his younger brother was tougher and took that. So he actually left, and so he's maintained a stepbrother relationship, where my other stepbrother is now my brother,
yes.
But it hasn't always been completely embracing with everybody. And so I know that I have friends out there who have adopted, and it was hard for years, but they adopted to rescue. And at the end of the day, it failed. And there's heartbreak and heartache and things. So looking at your story, I see success.
Definitely.
But I don't see it all over. But I also see where something that I want to tell you, several weeks ago, I had on my program a guy who is the mayor of Lampasas. Okay? And I knew him in Hawaii. When I was living on Maui, he started a church there. And found out he became mayor, and he became mayor and won the election by running on Christian values and principles. So something you said really hit me, is that you sat there and told these people you wanted to raise Sarah up in a Christian family with Jesus, and you were willing to say, Jesus, she's yours, I give her up to you.
Right.
Christian value, and yet she became yours. And I think that more and more I hear stories like this, success stories about lifting up Jesus and finding the victory.
Right.
I think that's huge. And that's more of that needs to be out there in the Christendom.
Yeah.
Really. And so what you said, I think it really permeates and should permeate within everybody who watches this program.
And I would say I've always said about Rosanne, she's the heart of our home. And when she said that day, that was a covenant that she made, not only to Jesus, but also to Sarah's biological families and our family. And Rosanne has kept her promise to the point of really a sacrificial love that she's given to both our girls. Because one thing when we talked about Adoptive, we wanted to make sure as a husband and a wife, we were strong and bonded together, and we were with Christ. But then in raising our two daughters, the love we have for Sophie is the same love we have for Sarah.
Yes.
And that's a love. It's Rosanne's love, my love, and Christ's love together. And we really believe that, and watch it. And so looking at over the last 11 and a half years, I mean, I know the girls feel this way, that we have, we've not only raised them in a Christian home, and Rosanne's kept her word in that covenant, and I've supported that. But beyond that, the joy as a dad has been watching the relationship between the two girls. And I know that the love is the same because the relationship, that while they're 6 years apart, Sophie needed Sarah as a sister just as much as Sarah needed Sophie as a sister.
Yes.
And we've never had a challenge with the for a lot of adoption, coming together. Sarah was adopted into our family, but Sophie, that was one of our biggest concerns, was how would Sophie respond to this? Remember when I shared a little while ago about that 10 days we had at respite care in 2011? I mean, from day one, the moment Sarah stayed, the first night, Sophie had her hands open, ready to receive her and to love on her, and she has just been. She's just been. I mean, their relationship is more than just being sisters. There's not jealousy. There's not envy. There's not, they don't get angry with each other. I mean, this is their relationship. Mm-hmm. While we shape it, it's their relationship. And we just wanted to share that.
My childhood best friend that I grew up with, his name is Reed. Hello, Reed. I'm sure you're not watching. They had a son. He and his wife, Corey, they had a son. His name is Scott. And they didn't have a second son. Of course, I think it's due to Reed's problem. He mentioned how his wife, you look fat and you have, and so she says, well, I'm never doing that again. And so they ended up adopting. They adopted a little boy out of Mexico, a little blonde-haired, blue-eyed.
Oh, wow.
Boy, it was really amazing.
Yes.
And so they fit really well, but they had two totally different personalities. And Steve, the adopted boy, he was just real strong. He always wanted to go in the military. Right. As a child. I want to be that. And so they grew up, and Scott actually was going to UCLA, but he didn't make it because he slept in on one of the tests. So he joined the Navy, and the Navy saw how smart he was and sent him to the academy, and he became an officer.
Wow,
and a pilot.
Awesome. Wow.
And Steve joined the Army, took 2 tours in Iraq, came home, got in a car accident, and died.
That was his heart.
Now, why I say this story is because when I was out visiting my friend in California, I called him on the phone to meet, and he was crying and wailing. And now Reed is like 6'2" and all muscle.
Right.
Okay, and so when you see not just tears, but I mean,
yes.
he was wailing, my son. And he was my son.
My son.
And you knew the love of that parent, even to an adopted child,
yes.
Right.
was super, super deep. Like their own.
Right.
Talk about that, because I know that you have these feelings.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. And she knows, she was not easy to keep at night because whatever happened to her as a baby, I think before she came to us as a foster child, she was left in an apartment and I believe probably overnight. So she would want to be making sure that somebody was there, so she would cry during the night. So I had to rush over, tell her, we're here, you're going to be okay, touch her. But it's difficult because she went from their home to Connie Noel's home, and then from Connie Noel's, the paternal grandmother's home, then back to, because she had such issues with sleep. Then she ended up in our home. And they were about to give her up before we fostered her because they could not take the issues that she had with her sleep. And so I begged them, please, not one more home, because then she'll be have more issues. And I prayed to Jesus, and they held on till we were able, and we were accepted in to taking her by the courts. Mm-hmm. So we fostered her, but that was months of being fostered.
But the love that you showed from the get-go, that you poured into her,
definitely
made a huge difference in her work, feeling that trust and that security.
CPS said at night, even though she's big baby, because she's long, you need to rock her to sleep. She's not had all that.
You're so little.
Yeah, so there's this long, big baby that we're walking back and forth, and Steve would help me, and then we would flip her into the bed, into the crib, but she was huge, and she would land in there because it was so big. I couldn't cradle her back in. She'd, fall, and she would climb out of that crib constantly,
But over time,
we just built this great friendship. But I bonded with her because I was that child that was like an ADHD child, but she was kind of like she had issues with.
But you understood her perspective and everything,
that was given, that her mother abused, that caused her to be a very active child. And eventually, that wore off a little bit, but not a lot. And they would suggest that she take these medications for sleep and medications for during the day, which I did not give her. So I would take her to different parks, McDonald's, and have her worked out. And then she would peek around and look at me, and I would wave to her. We just built this bond.
Yes.
And at night when she would get scared, and I would tell her a story. It was an ant story about how the ant got lost. And he was scared at night. He was scared being in the jungle. So he would always look for God to help him find his way back.
I think it's fortunate to get a child when they're young.
Yes.
When I lived on Oahu in Hawaii, we had went through the program with the Catholic Charities.
Yes.
Okay, so you did this through the state, CPS.
We did. We ultimately ended up through the state.
So we went through Catholic Charities, which is a whole different monster. And the way they have it programmed is it's harder. But they take in harder children, too. Mm-hmm. More disturbed situations.
Yes.
So we took in this girl, but she was a teenager. She had to go to counseling twice a week, and they had her giving drugs. So we didn't have the capability as a child to work that through because there was already stuff. And there was abuse issues and so forth. And her father was on the mainland, I guess in California somewhere, and her mom was here, and they'd taken her from her mom. And after a while, it was really good, but she would run away and then come back. So there's a lot of issues there. And finally, she ran away, and we had no idea where, and she was gone for a long time. Then we found out she went to California to find her dad, and it was kind of over. But there's a lot of hard issues out there because of the abuse or because of family problems where parents, it's almost like parents have the children, but they're not really either prepared or they really didn't know what it took to have children, so they don't really want the children to invade their space. They want them to say, I have a child, but not to really raise them.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Am I making sense there?
Total. Yes.
Because I see that with even people that are in my close family areas now,
Right.
and I see that.
Well, I think that may have played a factor with the couple that had Sarah. But I think ultimately, both we felt we were grateful that both families came to the same place to release her into our hands and to trust her in our hands. And in fact, we've continued to have a connection with her, with the grandparents on the mother's side over the years. So our family actually ended up growing a little bit because of there wasn't a restriction not to have that connection. But
And then we would sing this song, remember, together as a family.
yes.
I will love the Lord with all my
My
heart,
heart.
with all my soul.
Uh-huh.
And I would have her use her hand motions with all my heart,
Yes.
with all my soul, with all my mind, and all my strength. And we would constantly say that. And then she started just singing it all by herself. So I would teach her different songs like that. And it's the Shema prayer.
Yeah.
The prayer of the Shema, and I believe that there's a lot of little things that I did,
You did.
so many little
Yeah.
research I did to help her. And then Sophie helped her a lot too, my oldest daughter,
Yeah.
to
So I think
separate.
that back to your question earlier about love and the bonding that Rosanne really, it was amazing to watch how much she poured herself into while doing that with Sarah
and
still.
constantly reminding her,
Right.
hugging her, and telling her how much we loved her.
But you still did the same.
But
same
with
with Sophie too.
compassion and love,
And,
you know?
and what she's not telling you is during that time, I think if I remember the calendar correctly, Sophie ended up having we were still working through some developmental things with our oldest daughter, including at one point you had to sit here and homeschool Sophie. So while we're adopting Sarah and making the transition
yeah,
to Sarah
that was
into our
crazy.
home, Sophie had her own some of her own challenges she was dealing with as a second and third grader that we were parenting through, and then ultimately we had to make the decision to bring her home and start homeschooling her, and then ultimately she ended up in a Christian environment for a few
Cornerstone
years.
Christian
Yeah,
School.
Cornerstone Christian. But what I want to leave everybody who's thinking about adoption, all along the way we were never. How do I put it? I'll put it this way: help is all around you.
And the Spirit,
And
like
the-
you
and-
pray, and the
yes.
Spirit gives you all
Gives you
kinds of
ideas and
ideas
thoughts on where to guide
on what
us
to
and
guide you.
to where to go,
Or-
and trust in that.
Or
yes.
even at the parks. God
Yes, you
would
would-
just, I would meet other mothers. This is what you could do. You
Right.
could do this. You
I'm
could do
dealing
that.
with this issue.
You could, I mean, he would send my way. I would pray, but I'm like, well, whenever you think you have the time. I know it sounds silly, but he would send people constantly to us.
Well, how many of those prayers got answered in the next 24 hours?
But you do have to humble your
humble
heart
yourself, but the idea of
to ask.
that there's help all
Right.
around us, and CPS was still there for us, and we still had some connection with them for a while that was required, and then they got us connected to an organization for a lot other parents that adopted through CPS. So we
And
had
they
some,
wanted us to adopt other children.
right.
Really?
Yes.
Yes, but I told them she is quite a lot. Okay, because at night we had to be careful because if she'd climbed out, she would climb the cabinets in our kitchen, which were 11 feet
Right.
tall.
So.
Wow.
So it could be very dangerous for her.
Yeah.
So, did I get a lot of sleep? I left my career as an investment advisor, and I was making a pretty good income, but I had to leave it all because I wasn't sleeping to keep up with all that too.
Yeah.
So, sometimes you have to make hard choices.
Well, it's interesting because I'm a real observer, and in all the years I've observed the two of you, I would think not only she's the one with that love backbone, but she's also one that cracks the whip.
Oh yes, definitely.
Definitely.
And so it's been an incredible journey so far. But Sarah is a very well established, almost eighth grader now, 4 or 5 sport little superstar at her middle school in our neighborhood, and but the constant, in addition to the love that has been around her has been our church and our church family.
Yeah.
You know, one of the things at CBC, Community
Keeping
Bible
that
Church,
rhythm going of
is
putting her in church and keeping her
Right.
involved in camps and
Yeah.
and all those relationships. I always tell both my daughters have that tie with church and school.
So how old is she now?
She's 14 now.
So, do you know Radu?
yes.
Yes.
Okay, so Radu and Luda are coming next week. They're coming early because of my birthday. They were going to come in June, but they're bringing two of their girls, and I think their older one is 14.
Oh wow.
It'd be kind of cool because she speaks English now,
Oh wow.
Oh,
and
neat.
so she was almost going to stay with us for an extra couple months, but I think they said, "No, we're not ready to let her go
Not
yet."
quite yet.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so sweet.
But she and I have a really good relationship. And so she's just a really neat girl. But the two girls, they're like, I think they're 2 years apart, a year and a half apart. And so they're going to be here on the 15th, and they'll need things to do. So
That's
if
good.
during the summer, during June, if Sarah has free time, that would be kind of cool to get together.
Yeah.
But anyway, so what I was going to ask is that, so you went through CPS, that's state, right?
Yes.
Texas State.
Right.
So let me ask you something. So because she was in the program, in the CPS process, does the state now will pay for her college if she goes to Texas State? So that's something really
Yes.
a nice thing.
Yes, it
Is that if
is.
she goes to a Texas State college, State
Texas.
University, that she
Right.
will have all of her, is it tuition and room and board?
No,
Just
just
tuition.
tuition.
Okay.
Which is still a lot.
Yeah. Well, I was looking at it the other day. It's like, $10,000, $12,000.
It is a year, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, it's 14 really for the whole year
With the books.
if you do full
If
time.
books and yeah.
Yeah.
With the books, yeah.
Yeah, I was looking at Texas
No.
State yesterday. It was 11,300 or 400, and that was tuition only.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it's expensive now.
yeah, but anyway, that's a really interesting, a nice little
Definite.
thing.
Huge perk.
But you know, the blessing and all, and it's again, I can't emphasize enough how God, if you seek Him, you seek Him with all your heart. How He gets involved in every little bit of the process, and to see in Sophie her development, her relationship with the Lord now, and
Right.
growing up as an adult, and then Sarah has to push me as a dad. Because she wants to be at CBC, she wants to be involved in what's going on with the church,
Yeah.
with the middle school program, and as Rosanne said, the camp. So that hunger for having that relationship with God is clearly there, and I give credit to not only Christ but also to Rosanne, because she has always made Jesus a priority in our home, and made the love and exemplify the love of Jesus and how we've raised both our girls.
Well, I would have to think that it would be both of you. It wouldn't work as well as it sounds like it's working if it was just one of you.
Right.
True.
you know.
Thanks for saying that, but
Well, it has to be that way because I think that you get one person doing a lot and the other person's not doing much, or well, I'm busy at my job,
Right.
and you're not really plugging in at home. Well, then the
True.
home isn't going to be strong. It's going to fall apart. There's things that
Sure.
aren't going to be. I mean, that's even going to be one of my programs is about missionaries, and how do they deal with family and home as they're working
pour it
as
out
a
so
minister.
much, right?
And that will be Radu and Luda. They'll be
Yes.
here. So I
That's
told them
great.
you're going to be on my program in June about
Yes.
this because that's a really big issue.
Huge.
One of the things I talk about with a lot of ministers is about balancing not only your ministry with your home life, because if you can't do that, then you don't have a business in the ministry. You need to do this, or you
Yes.
can lose your family.
Yes.
Yes.
And that's a big thing. So when you look at an adoption or adoptive family, you're looking at kind of the same thing. A lot of input to everywhere.
Right.
Both parents, if there's other siblings, whatever it might be, you need that togetherness. It has to be that way if you want a complete, rounded, healthy situation.
And now that this may sound a little strange, but in addition to adopting Sarah, we're also now we became caregivers full time to Rosanne's parents 5 years ago. So in a sense, we had another adoption event where we had to bring her dad and mom into our home full time and care for him. And again, as we've shared it on your show, the approach it's assimilating Sarah into our family, that was another change. But the love,
But also, it created a bond for her
more
with her
bond.
grandparents
Exactly.
too.
Yeah.
And her
Exactly.
job was sometimes to manage them wherever we were at. And she's like, I can't find Grandpa, but I found Grandma.
Yes.
Just silly things,
Well, and it's really funny because last year, my mom, she called me up and she said, I want to come live with you.
Aw.
And it was really funny because my mom absolutely nothing about Jesus, church, all that. It's
No.
not been there. God is there somewhere,
Right.
somehow,
Yes.
something,
Right.
whatever it might be, whoever it might be, I don't know, but that's it. So she said to me two things. She says, "I know you guys eat chicken because my wife likes to eat cooked chicken." Everybody who knows us is like chicken 5 days a week. So she goes, I know I don't like chicken, but I'll eat chicken. And she goes, and I'll go to church with you. I go, really? Because
Wow.
she always told me I hate organized religion. I'll never go to church.
Wow.
So she's moved in with us, and she started going to my class. And in my class, you take notes, because I
Yes.
have fill-in stuff.
yes,
And we talk and we discuss. Well, she's watched my program every so often. And she thinks it's really good. And so she does that. And now she goes to my class. Now she's going to church, and she asked for a Bible.
Wow.
So
That's
we gave her
amazing.
a Bible for a study Bible
Yes.
for Mother's Day. And she's moved in, and she's part of the family.
That's
It's
it.
not easy. She's on all
No.
kinds of different medications.
Right.
It is
And
enough.
Susan, really, because I don't have a clue about medical stuff.
Right.
Susan said the other day that she sees signs of something. I'm like, what do you mean? And she says, well, this and that. Oh, that just looks like she's just tired or needs a nap or something.
that sounds like us guys. Yeah,
And I
that's
just
our-
don't, I totally goes over my head. I'm clueless,
Uh-huh.
And so, but Susan's like key in on it, like
Right.
just like that. And she saw signs one time we visited her mom when her mom and dad lived with us. And
Yes.
her mom went to a home for temporarily because there was a problem.
Right.
She went in there and her mom was acting some way. She says, she's had a stroke. I says, what do you mean she's had a stroke? She says, yeah, she went to the people. We need to take her to the hospital and we need to send her to the hospital.
Yes.
They weren't going to do it. She says, you do it now or else. And so they
Right.
did, and sure enough, she had a little stroke. She's got this thing.
Yeah,
So-
Rosanne does that thing too. I think she really does. Has a sense. My mother moved within a mile of us, and so Roseanne's built a very special relationship with my mom, and does. I'll just be frank, a better job of checking in on her than I do as her.
So you and I are like, we're just clueless.
Well, there's a little cluelessness as a guy.
And
but,
Roseanne's like, yeah.
but it's a sixth sense
Yeah.
that I think ladies and moms have, and she's just again I won't say it enough, but she is the heart of our home, and the love that she has for Sarah and Sophie, she's shown her parents, my mother, me, and everybody that she's with, and just pours herself out. And I think the end result is we have a very loving spirit-filled home because of you, honey, and your heart, and I appreciate you for that.
Well, I've always known Roseanne to be a pretty strong lady. I mean, when you ran the Beacon, it was like really under your thumb. I just always have seen you as
Right.
that strong
Yes,
Aw.
person.
she is.
That's
know.
good.
I think even in times when we feel weak, there's strength there.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's important. You rise up, even under the weight, and you feel like you want to break. For some reason, when you're strong within, you have that ability to step up.
That's right.
You've got that.
But I view adoption as not the other option to start a family, but an equal option is to have, I believe God gave us both the ability to create a child and the ability to adopt a child, and in His eyes, they're one and the same. And so when I think about adoption from a biblical perspective, and you could feel free to share your thoughts on this, Alan, but Jesus Himself experienced what we've talked about today.
Oh yeah, we talked about that in blended families.
Yes.
He was a stepchild.
He was a
Right.
stepchild.
And a stepfather.
Yes.
And so I was going to ask you real quick before we step into that. So when Sarah looks at you, does she see you, not just call you, but see you as her mom and dad?
Oh, definitely.
Absolutely, yes.
I think that's huge
Only.
too. It's one thing to say mom and dad, it's another thing to have that, you are my mom, you are my dad.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
I think that has to come from you guys, because I don't think a child is going to automatically cling to that, maybe verbally and what they want, but they won't become that unless you offer that.
I think yeah, that's definite. I think it's just a result of not just the love, but also you got to be involved in your children's lives, not just be on the disciplinary or here's what you need to do, but you got to engage and be involved in them, and so that's a big part of it also.
And Vivian Capel, the Capels, I had been at their home and I was telling her, had some struggles with her. And she goes, you need to find out the one sport or thing that she does and do it well and cheer her on.
Yes.
Every step of the way. And I was like, it kept in my mind. And so, unfortunately, with Sarah being so talented at many sports, we definitely are there for her every step of the way, cheering her on. But my parents did that for me. I was in all sports, too.
Yeah.
So I always think back of all the effort my parents did for me. Why wouldn't I do that for her, too?
Yeah, especially if you consider her yours.
Yeah.
Right?
And to speak to your point, I mean, she, at 14 years old, I mean, she just finished
All the practices
a soccer season, and she looks, she always asks every time, will you be at my games?
Yeah.
Will you be at my games, And
I told her every time, you need to be thankful that Daddy can come and Mama can come.
Yes.
Because my parents never went to my games. And I just had to accept that. And it hurt. I told her, Sarah. I looked at the stand, and my parents weren't there. But they did drop me off at practice all the time.
Right. So they were there
And at
different
the
ways.
games.
Yes.
And I was grateful for that. But I said, you need to be thankful and grateful, honey.
They were definitely mom and dad, for sure.
Yeah. Well, the key issue, as far as I'm concerned, in any situation like this, is that Jesus is the center of not just your home, but the individual relationships you have with one another. That is probably the key issue. And if you've totally said, Jesus, you're yours, then there you go. You've already said, Jesus, you're the center of this, and you keep it that way. And that's what blossoms into, what's really important.
It's true.
Yeah.
If you let the Holy Spirit in and let them guide you, then you can't go wrong.
I think you're absolutely right. I'm impressed with you guys. I really am. I've always thought highly of you guys. Rosanne more than you, Steve.
Well, you should. Yeah, please.
However, I spent more time talking and doing things with Steve.
Right.
Well, as the saying goes, behind a good man is a great woman.
Oh.
Yeah.
So I could definitely say that. I know I can say that about Susan. You're a good man, and
Yes,
she's
I
a
love Susan
great
a lot.
lady and woman, and so is Rosanne. And I think about that from the context of the gift that God gives us, right? We're the bride of Christ.
Yeah.
That God has this sovereignty and the power to be able to speak, snap a finger, say what you want. He could change everything that we're experiencing in a moment. He instead chooses to have a relationship individually with us and work through us to make those same changes,
Yeah.
one step at a time, one day at a time.
Yeah,
Fascinates me.
Susan controls me in passive ways.
I love Susan.
It's like, you're not doing this. Excuse me? You're just not doing this. But I want to go there. No. very,
serious.
no. I thought you weren't going to control me. Okay, you do what you want, but you're not doing that.
Well, as we always say, I'm sure I've heard this from both our pastors at CBC over the years, but it's funny how the voice of God oftentimes comes in a very soft and gentle voice of your wife.
No, she likes hearing that.
Yes. That's true.
She reminds me that Robert used to say that all the time. She reminds me of that all the time. Well, this is really neat. One of the things that I think is so important is that we understand that adoption isn't just adopting a child, but they're also adopting you. And it's not only adoption
Right.
from a parent to a child, but it's also the combination goes in with other siblings, goes in with grandparents.
Yes.
It
True.
goes with uncles and aunts. It goes with the entire family. And I think that's such a big thing. But I really like what you said. I won't get away from it. Is that when you had to offer her up to Jesus and say, you know what, I let go, and she's yours. That, I think, is probably key. That is key.
Well, you know, that and on that
Definitely.
point, that was a similar prayer that we had also in that moment in China, where we had to make a decision about Name Ying, and then also in the process of going through the process of creating Sarah, and then the journey of, you know, what Rosanne didn't share about her story is that, you know, and this is, she actually had an extra out of body experience, and when she was in the coma in heaven with Christ, it was part of her testimony. So
Yes.
so it's, you know,
That's a whole other story. Life and death situation.
absolutely, life and death
Yeah.
situation. But in all the cases, it's may your will be done.
Yeah.
May your will be done.
Well, thank you for joining me
Yes.
today. And
Thank you.
so anyway, that's the end of our program. I want to thank everybody for joining today. I hope you share this program with other people. Everyone, you have a wonderful day and a wonderful week. Aloha.
Yes.